obviously, you're doing construction management, and so there's a building that gets involved. And could you for people who don't have a background in this, walk us through the different kind of stages of resolution that these drawings go through, what they're called, and kind of at what point, what document goes to whom?
Yes, yeah. So in that particular aspect of the project, your plan development, you're going to start very early with some schematics, and that will help everyone to get an idea of how is this building massed, what type of building is it mixed use, is it an institutional use, retail, what is it? And you're going to go from there and get everybody comfortable at the city level, at the development level, on what this project is going forward. From there, you're going to phase into some level of DD or design development. And again, you're just continuing to develop the drawings. You're continuing to pay the architect and the structural engineer and whatever other engineering disciplines and design disciplines you have on board at that point to further develop the building so that you can get through your approvals process and so that you can get funding for the project. From there, you're going to go any number of different paths, but all along the way, you're trying to figure out what the costs are for what you're drawing, and at the same time, the feasibility of building it on the site you're planning to build it.
It's a moving target as you change the drawings, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's back and forth, back and forth.
A lot of back and forth, and hopefully you don't have any enormous misses where you build the plans to a 10-story building that the city absolutely will not allow anything higher than a 5. But that's where you hopefully cross that bridge far early in schematic, and so anyway, as you go through design development, you're going to develop a permit set, and eventually after the permit set, you're going to have your construction drawings, and sometimes those are one and the same. It just completely depends on the process of pricing with the contractors and approvals at the city process. So, but then once you're building, you're going to continue on with revisions, and you're going to have some minor revisions that you might call bulletins or addendum, or just straight up revisions, and those will continue throughout the project because the owner, whoever the ownership entity is, or they'll make changes and desire to add things, take away things, save costs, add costs. And sometimes the bulletins will come out just simply because there was design misses, which is it's just part and parcel with the process.
One thing that I didn't realize until I had done some project management was that you're actually still working on your drawings even after you've submitted them to the city, even for the permit set.
Right.
That kind of blew my mind, but that had to do with can you explain why that is?
Yeah, sure. And so part of the process with getting the city's approval is putting in front of them enough to get the permit, which is not 100% baked construction documents.
Right.
But put together the plans to a degree that, whether it's 85%, 90%, somewhere in that range is where the building department and everyone is going to be fine signing off. And
right.
That's sufficient. And so that way you can get in line, because if it's going to take them 3 weeks, 6 weeks to review, you can then finish your documents and finish your bidding and finish wrapping up everything else while they're completing their review and approval process.
Because the things that are going to be a code issue aren't going to be that last 5% usually.
Exactly. There will be, should not be at that point any big major issues. And so that at that point you can dial in, dimensioning and references and,
right.
finishes and specifics like that. But you bought yourself some time, and time is
exactly. So once you are designed and permitted and insured, what amazed me is just the volume of different document packages that are involved at every stage of construction. One of my guests, Jonathan Siegel, talked about being papered to death. So, talk about this whole phenomenon of being papered to death and what the different pieces of that snowball are.
Yeah, no, that's a good phrase. That's a good way of putting it. But there's a lot of filings to be had early on that take a lot of paperwork. But then once you're getting very close to breaking ground, or that last little leg of the entitlements and the approvals and the financing, you've got to put all these packages together to make sure that your lending and ownership or equity group are all on the same page with what has occurred to date, and
Right.
what the plan is. So those packages are going to can be heavy, depending on the type of project. Again, I'm speaking mostly to a ground-up development, but after that, and after you get the project underway, every week you're going to have your meetings that require meeting minutes, and you're going to go through RFIs, which are requests for information, and those are a vehicle for subcontractors and contractors to ask questions to the design team or ownership about what did you really mean by this, or can we do this instead of that, and
which, if not answered promptly, can have people just standing around. I mean,
absolutely. So there's hot RFIs and not so hot, and some of those sit on the table for a month, and others for a few days, because they're just absolutely critical to keeping the ball moving down the court.
Yeah.
Along with RFIs in that same bucket, I would put submittals, and so again, you've got all the specs that you have from the beginning of the project, where the architect and the engineers have specified every detail of the project,
the kind of quality and what they're looking for in the different fixtures and so on.
Exactly. So they basically say, this is what we want you to buy and build and install, types of elevators, types of doors, windows, everything that you could possibly have involved in the project. But then the submittal process is basically echoing back to the A&E team and to the
This is what we're
team.
thinking of going with.
Exactly. So you gave us the option of going 3 different types of windows. Here's what we're selecting, and these are the dimensions. Is that all good with you? And then, we as the ownership team will go through and say, oh, we like this color or that color, and we don't like that type of window or that. So, and with that process, those submittals, you need, again, very hot ones and urgent ones that need to get done, as well as sometimes bouncing it to the city to say, hey, this is part of our public work that we're doing outside of the project bounds.
Right.
You need to approve these as well, whether that's lights or sewer or such. So then I would say another aspect of paperwork would be just the monthly pay application or a requisition process. And those can be 200 pages long, so they could, again, depending on size of project.
And people seem to be more fired up about the pay app than the window selection.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to get paid for the work they're doing, I guess. So quite frankly, yeah, in summary, basically all the subcontractors will make statements. Again, generally speaking, they're making a statement on a specific AIA form that says, here's the work we've completed, and this is what we've done.
Since the last draw, since their last payment, yeah.
Since their last payment. So the period of a month has gone by, more or less, and this is what we want to get paid. The general contractor or the construction manager will aggregate those into one large pay application, and then that gets reviewed by the whole team. And they also use the same forms that the subcontractors use, which is the typical is an AIA, the G702 and the G703, and that summarizes everything. Within that, you've got to have your waivers, for the work that you've done and been paid for, and you'll most likely have conditional waivers.
Now, walk me through the logic of that for folks who don't know. Like, you're asking to be paid. Which everybody gets that part, but you're also including a waiver for folks who don't have the background. Well, why are we asking them to give us a waiver? What's the waiver?
Yeah, sure. So essentially what you're saying is, look, I've done this work. If you find it acceptable, then you're going to pay me. After you pay me, then I cannot post a lien against the project or against you for the work that you've paid me for.
Yeah,
we're all copacetic at that point, and I don't take any issue going forward. So you have at every pay application, you have those for every single subcontractor and for the general. And then at the final pay application, you've got to do a final waiver of lien, which says, again, I hold no encumbrance to it. I have no issue, and I've been paid. We're happy. You're happy. We can all go home. More or less. That's the way.
That's the way every construction job ends. I'm happy, you're happy, we can all go home.
That's precisely it. Let's have a drink and celebrate. That's exactly how it all ends. If it was only so easy. Another, I guess, 2 more pieces of paperwork that you go through with the project are change orders. Again, as a developer, you want those to be minimal, but there's going to be points at which there are reasons for there to be extra work to be done, whether it's you want to upgrade from X type of flooring to more premium type of flooring or vice versa. And so you're going to have an added cost to that, both material and labor. And that can take any number of different forms, whether it's simply saying, yes, proceed on a time and material basis. So your crew goes out there, they get it done, they just keep track of their time and material and charge you. Or they'll submit a price ahead of time before they do the work, and you say, okay, it's going to be $20,000 to add this. Okay, we approve it. Go ahead and do that work, and we'll pay you for the $20,000. You add it to the contract, and away you go. But again, it's more paperwork and analysis that has to be done to make sure that the pricing is legit, everybody's on board with it. If it's a mechanical or electrical plumbing issue, I always make sure that those guys, the design team looks at it, as well as the architect looks at it and says, yeah, we validate. That's generally what we expect to see to pay for a length of linear footage of pipe or whatnot. And then finally, as you're wrapping up the project and you're reconciling all these things, and we're getting close to that happy moment when it's done, there's the development of a punch list, which again is more paperwork, but it's very necessary. And more, quite frankly, you're seeing it in an electronic
digital
application.
Yep.
So it makes it a lot easier. You basically walk around the building and you flag things as the ownership team or the design team, and you say, this paint is in the right color, or there's holes in the paint, or there's a hole in the door, or this air conditioning unit isn't running properly. And so as you go through the commissioning and the punch list process, you're just going to continue to flag things for the contractors to address. And then as they address it, you check it off the list and minimize that list as you get toward that final payment and final closure of the project.
The phenomenon of change orders and developers hate change orders, because then you're getting this sum. It's like, oh, that's going to be $35,000 to change that actually, and you're like, what is this? Where did this number come? So you just hate it. But in response to that, some people have said, some people kind of in the academy, it seems more so, have said, if you just spend an extra 6 weeks getting your documents further and looking for conflicts between the mechanical system and the electrical, and if you just invest the money to do that, it would pay itself off in getting the building done faster and having fewer change orders. Now, that is what I was told in classes that I had. I have yet to meet a single person in the field who agrees with that, and so I'm trying to understand the discrepancy there, because they both have the air of reason. What's your view?
I guess my observation would be that human tendency is to be like a gas, and we're just going to fill the space we have. So if you've got 5 months to do your 90% set, or if you have 5 weeks to do your 90% set of drawings, you're just going to take that space and you're going to fill it, and it's going to get done on Saturday before it's due, and it's still going to be 90%, even though you had an extra 4 months, almost 4 months to do it. So yes and no. There's absolutely a logic to that in terms of, hey, let's have more coordination.
If human effort was linear and they were going to actually keep going on the same trajectory.
Precisely. But that being said, the more coordination that you can have between trades, absolutely, and particularly in the design build process, when you have your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, fire alarm, when you have all those trades in early and are doing a design build process, and can have all those guys sit in the same room, go through the models, and talk about conflicts and resolve them early, you absolutely are going to save time and money down the road. And then same with the architect and engineering team. If the architect runs a good process with their engineers, if it's not design build, then theoretically each of you have access to your models or to whatever type of drawings you have, and are able to call out where there's conflicts between structure and the utilities or whatever. So I think there's I think probably the bottom line would be it's diminishing returns. That you have the time, you take extra time, and at some point you just got to get in the ground. And once people really actually start looking at the drawings because they have to build it, that's when the questions will come out.
Well, breaks ground is a perfect last kind of question. Could you now walk us through the essential kind of headline sections of a Gantt if you're building, for example, it's a garden variety post-tension concrete building, 10 stories, some retail on the bottom, apartments, some offices, whatever. What are the essential, steps that happen between that being a piece of bare ground or let's say an older building, and now suddenly that's all gone and everything is made new and we have this new finished building? What are the headlines there in that process?
Generally speaking, yeah, you're going to start with your demo, wipe the site clean and get a fresh start, and then you're going to go down with, if you have underground parking, that's going to have to happen before you start going up. Once you get there, you're going to do some of your.
So you often, you clean it down, and then you get down to the ground, and then you're working just to get back.
Exactly.
To
You're going down. You're pumping out water. You're doing whatever you need to do to start that foundation coming up. And while you're doing that, you're running utilities. And so, where does your water come from? Where does your sewer come from?
Right.
All those different services. And then as you go up with the building, you're concerned with first the structure, and then within the structure, bringing up all of those services into the building.
And the riser.
And then, through risers and all the like. And really, you're leaving the outside site not alone at that point, but more or less alone at that point, because you're not going to do your landscaping till the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going up with the structure, you're going up with all your utilities and the infrastructure for your systems, the building systems. And then after that, you're basically getting your rough-in inspections done with the city. And so you've got things like your electrical pipe in the walls and the ceilings. You've got your duct. You've got your pipe for the fire and sewer and water. And at that point, you get your rough-in inspection. That's a big deal. So you'll do
Turning
a
point.
rough-in inspection on an area by area or floor by floor basis. And at that point, you'll be able to get approvals and then start drywalling and starting to enclose. And a lot of times, what you'll see is then you work down from the top, and so you'll start enclosing and cleaning things up at the top. As again in the background, you're still finishing things up in like a pump room or some of the air handling and things like that. But you're starting to basically work your way back down the building with the finishes, so that you kind of work your way out of the building rather than painting yourself into the corner at the top.
Right.
Because you're always trekking. You're still
that's where half the punch list stuff comes from. I mean, it was done fine the first time, and some guy was walking down the hall and put a 3-inch hole in it. So it's
yeah. You swing around with a 2x4, and all of a sudden you've got an extra vent vent hole through the. So you'll work your way back down through the building. Again, part and parcel with the rough-in inspection is making sure that your building is enclosed. So on your schedule, on the critical path, you're typically going to have a point or points where you're weather tight, because again, you don't want to start putting electrical in and allowing weather to get in there before you close it up. So having that date on your critical path is a very good idea and critical to have. And then you're just going to work your way out of the building. Again, just finishing up all the little, hanging up toilet accessories, and just basically taking all the little minutia down through the building as you work your, as you're doing the little lipstick things at the very end. You're also doing your landscaping on the exterior and cleaning that up, because at that point you're done with the exterior, whether you've got curtain wall or whether you've got siding, whatever it is. And so you no longer have large machinery and lulls on the exterior that are going to mar up all of your freshly done landscaping. So at that point, you kind of work your way out, get your landscaping done, pretty it up, and get ready to turn it over, and hopefully all your plants live on the outside.
A lot of the literature that I read during school said, every other industry is growing in efficiency, but construction hasn't grown in efficiency, and other people said, no, that's a load of crap. Do you think that there will be any major or exponential improvements to efficiency in terms of prefab, which has been kind of hanging out there as a promise forever,
Yeah.
or some technological, the way that we handle meetings and speed up these communication processes. Is there some low-hanging fruit out there that could, putting the porta potties in more opportune places for the workers? Is there some low-hanging fruit to taking a given project and or taking all projects and taking them to the next level of efficiency? Or do you think that there are intractable issues, weather, people's vacation, the multiplicity of different stakeholders that mean that this is never going to be the most flawless, fluid thing that you can do? Where do you fall in that debate?
Yeah, a little bit of both, I guess. At the end of the day, you're putting physical components into empty space, or you're redeveloping something and putting new components into an existing space, and it's physical work, and there are so many different ways that we've sped up the industry, whether it's being more modular, whether it's prefab, and all of those things are helping tremendously. But at the end of the day, there are only so many people that you can put, only so many bodies you can put in a space,
right,
at any given time, and that just takes, to physically put materials into a building just takes time. And so you'll continue to see things like, even 3D printing. I mean, 3D printing is going to be potentially, it's holding out the carrot out there, kind of like modular construction has, where it seems like there's great promise there, and some component of it will absolutely bring a ton of bang for the buck. I mean, if you're able to print an entire shell of concrete,
oh right,
and now you've got, and I've seen
Chinese
experiments like this, if you will, again, that you can only take it so far, because at the end of the day, you have so many different types of materials coming in. Electrical wire versus wet pipe versus air, duct that carries air, and then versus a structure that is meant to carry loads. And so each of those different components can only be made more efficient to an extent before you just lose the whole purpose of a building altogether. So I have great hope. I'd love to work on a project where we're doing 3D printing. I've seen some very neat things done with that, at least in theory, and sort of one-off bases. But right now, I think the main thing that's buying us time is just prefab. The ability to put together
2x4 walls, prefab, any kind of basic things. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, prefab structure, prefab electrical, prefab plumbing, all of that saves a lot of time. As for communications, I mean, a lot of that is execution. I mean, there are fantastic tools out there. Again, just take punch list, for example, at the very end of the project. There are there are different ways of adopting and adapting to a quicker and more readily available system like BIM 360 or something along those lines, where you can quickly communicate exactly where in a building there's an issue, take a photo of it, type up a narrative, flag what contractor needs to take care of it. But again, it's a little bit of a learning curve. Everybody's got to get on board with it and start to learn to use it.
It's a tool just like any other tool, yeah.
Exactly. And if you don't know how to use a tool, you're a little bit SOL. So that's, we'll keep seeing more efficiencies built, and who knows, there's more magic to happen, I believe.